Some lessons don't arrive loudly. They come through silence, through waiting, through nights where effort isn't met with clarity. At some point, you realize something important. Love isn't supposed to leave you guessing. Care isn't meant to feel like a puzzle. And attention that appears only when it's convenient isn't affection, it's confusion. This isn't about blaming anyone, it's about waking up. Because when someone truly values you, their presence doesn't come and go like a signal with bad reception. It's steady, it's clear, it's consistent. Today, this is about understanding your worth and learning to walk away from anything that makes you question it. You deserve love that shows up, not just when it wants something. There's a moment in life when you stop asking why someone is distant and start asking why you keep accepting distance as love. It doesn't happen suddenly. It arrives slowly after too many pauses, too many unanswered messages, too many explanations you made for someone who never asked you to understand them. It comes when your energy feels spent, not because you love deeply, but because you are constantly adjusting yourself to fit someone else's uncertainty. Consistent love doesn't make you anxious. It doesn't keep you checking your phone or rereading conversations, searching for meaning between the lines. It doesn't disappear for days and return as if nothing happened. It doesn't make you feel grateful for basic respect. It doesn't test how much silence you can tolerate before breaking. Confusing attention does exactly that. It keeps you emotionally busy but spiritually tired. It gives you just enough to stay, but never enough to feel safe. One day there is warmth, laughter, interest. The next day, distance, excuses, or absence. And slowly, without realizing it, you start blaming yourself for the inconsistency. You wonder if you said too much, needed too much, felt too deeply. But love was never meant to feel like walking on unstable ground. Real love is steady, not perfect, not dramatic, not always loud, but present. It shows up even on ordinary days, especially on ordinary days. It doesn't vanish when life gets inconvenient. It doesn't require you to compete with distractions, moods, or other priorities to be chosen again and again. Consistency is not boring. It is grounding. It is safety. It is the freedom to breathe without fear of abandonment, hiding behind silence. Confusing attention thrives on unpredictability. It keeps you hooked because your nervous system confuses intensity with intimacy. The highs feel high because the lows are so low. The rare moments of closeness feel powerful because they are scarce. And scarcity can trick the heart into believing something is valuable simply because it's hard to get. But difficulty is not depth. Distance is not mystery. Emotional unavailability is not strength. There is nothing romantic about feeling unsure of where you stand. There is nothing deep about someone who only reaches out when it suits them. And there is nothing noble about staying in a situation that slowly teaches you to accept less than you deserve. Consistent love doesn't need reminders. It doesn't need chasing. It doesn't need decoding. You don't have to guess whether it's real because it doesn't hide. It speaks through actions that repeat, not promises that change. It listens when you speak. It responds when you reach out. It notices when you're quiet. It doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't make affection conditional. It doesn't withdraw care to regain control. And most importantly, it doesn't make you feel like you're asking for too much when you're only asking for clarity. Confusing attention often comes wrapped in charm. It can sound poetic. It can feel intense. It can mirror your desires just enough to pull you closer. But over time, it reveals itself through inconsistency, through the way effort fades once you're emotionally invested, through the way communication becomes selective, through how accountability is avoided and responsibility is shifted onto you. You start hearing things like, "I'm just busy, I'm not good at expressing emotions, that's just how I am," while your needs remain unmet. And slowly you learn to minimize yourself. You wait, you adapt, you stay quiet to keep the peace, you accept crumbs and call them understanding. But love that requires you to disappear is not love. Consistency does not mean perfection. It means reliability. It means when someone says they care, their behavior aligns with that statement over time. It means you don't feel like you're in a constant audition. It means your presence is not optional or disposable. When love is consistent, you feel calm, not confused. You feel secure, not suspicious. You feel chosen, not tolerated. There is space for growth, not anxiety. There is room for vulnerability, not fear of being ignored once you open up. Confusing attention keeps you in survival mode. Your mind stays alert, your heart stays guarded, and your body carries tension it shouldn't have to. You become hype, are aware of changes in tone, timing, and behavior. You learn to read absence as a message. You try to earn consistency by being more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. But consistency is not a reward, it is a requirement. You don't have to prove your worth to be treated with respect. You don't have to suffer quietly to be loved deeply. You don't have to accept unpredictability to keep someone interested. Someone who truly cares does not make you feel disposable. They don't disappear without explanation. They don't keep you guessing about their intentions. They don't offer half presents and expect full loyalty in return. Consistent love is intentional. It is shown through repeated actions, not occasional gestures. It doesn't rely on mood or convenience. It doesn't fade when attention shifts elsewhere. It doesn't leave you alone in moments where support matters most. Confusing attention often feels personal when it isn't. It's not about your value. It's about someone else's inability or unwillingness to show up in a healthy way. But knowing that doesn't always make it easier to walk away, because attachment can grow even in unhealthy soil. Still, clarity begins when you stop romanticizing inconsistency, when you stop calling absence space, when you stop calling mixed signals complexity, when you stop calling emotional distance independence. Consistency doesn't restrict you, it frees you. It allows you to be yourself without fear of losing someone the moment you express a need. It allows love to feel safe instead of stressful. You deserve a connection where communication doesn't feel like a negotiation, where affection isn't rationed, where presence doesn't fade temporary, where you don't have to prepare yourself for disappointment every time things feel good. If someone's attention only appears when they want something, that's not love. If their care disappears when you need reassurance, that's not love. If their effort fluctuates based on convenience, that's not love. Love that lasts is not confusing. It doesn't leave emotional bruises disguised as lessons. It doesn't teach you to expect less. It teaches you to trust. And the moment you begin choosing consistency over chaos, something shifts. Your nervous system rests. Your standards rise. Your tolerance for emotional uncertainty decreases. You stop chasing clarity from people who benefit from keeping you unsure. You begin to recognize that peace is not boring. It is rare. It is earned through self-respect. It is protected by boundaries. It is sustained by consistency. Walking away from confusing attention doesn't mean you failed. It means you listened to yourself. It means you chose stability over intensity. It means you valued your emotional health more than temporary validation. Consistent love may arrive quietly, without drama, without confusion, without urgency. But when it does, you won't feel the need to question it. You won't feel anxious waiting for the other shoe to drop. You won't feel like you're asking for too much. You'll feel grounded, seen, safe. And once you experience that kind of love, steady, reliable, clear, you no longer mistake unpredictability for passion, or distance for depth, or confusion for connection. You begin to understand that real love doesn't keep you guessing where you stand, because it never leaves you standing alone in the first place. Wondering if today you matter, or if tomorrow you'll have to earn your place again by staying silent, by waiting longer, by hoping harder, by accepting less, by telling yourself that this time will be different, even though the pattern has already shown you what it is and how it continues to repeat itself through moments of closeness followed by absence, through words that sound right but actions that fall short, through promises that feel comforting in the moment but fade when consistency is required, through connections that keep you emotionally invested but never emotionally secure, through attention that arrives just in time to keep you from leaving but never stays long enough to let you rest in it, through cycles that teach you to confuse longing with love and endurance with loyalty, while quietly asking you to put your needs aside one more time and wait without knowing how long or for what exactly, only feeling that familiar tension in your chest as you hope that consistency will finally come instead of realizing that consistency does not arrive where confusion is already comfortable for someone else. You don't need to earn love by enduring confusion. Love was never meant to be a test of how much discomfort you can tolerate while staying kind. Somewhere along the way, many people learned the wrong lesson that if they are patient enough, understanding enough, forgiving enough, love will finally settle in and stay. But love does not grow stronger because you suffer quietly. It grows stronger when it is met with mutual effort, clarity, and presence. When you feel like you are constantly proving your worth, something is already missing. Love does not ask you to audition. It does not ask you to shrink your needs so someone else can feel comfortable. It does not ask you to wait indefinitely while someone decides if you are important enough to choose fully. Yet many people stay in situations where love feels conditional. They learn to negotiate for basic care. They accept inconsistency and call it growth. They accept silence and call it space. They accept emotional distance and call it independence. Over time, they forget what it feels like to be loved without fear of loss hovering in the background. Earning love sounds noble, but it slowly erodes self-respect. You begin to believe that affection is something granted when you behave correctly, when you're easy, when you don't ask questions, when you don't express discomfort, when you don't require reassurance. You begin to monitor yourself, adjusting tone, timing, and expectations to avoid pushing someone away. But love that requires performance is not love. It is approval. Real love does not improve when you abandon yourself. It doesn't deepen because you ignore your own emotional signals. It doesn't become more secure because you accept less. It becomes fragile because it is built on imbalance. You should never feel like affection is something you must unlock through sacrifice. Love is not a reward system. It is not something you earn by being endlessly patient with someone who remains unsure of you. It is not something that appears only when you are convenient, quiet, or useful. If you are constantly afraid of asking for clarity, that fear is information. If you worry that expressing your needs will make someone withdraw, that is not sensitivity, it is instability. Love does not punish honesty. Love does not retreat when you ask where you stand. Many people confuse effort with overextension. They believe that giving more will eventually inspire the other person to match them. They stay longer than they should, hoping consistency will appear if they just hold on. But love does not respond to pressure. It responds to willingness. You can give endlessly to someone who is emotionally unavailable and still feel empty. You can be loyal, understanding, and committed and still feel uncertain. Because love is not created by one person's endurance. It is sustained by mutual presence. You are not asking for too much when you ask to be considered. You are not needy for wanting reassurance. You are not demanding for wanting consistency. These are not excessive needs. They are foundational. When someone makes you feel like you must suppress your needs to keep them, they are teaching you that your comfort is optional. Over time, that lesson becomes internal. You start minimizing yourself even when no one asks you to. You stop voicing disappointment. You stop expecting reliability. You stop trusting your instincts. But instincts don't disappear. They wait, and eventually they speak through exhaustion, through emotional fatigue, through the quiet realization that love shouldn't feel like survival. Earning love often comes from early conditioning, the belief that worth is tied to usefulness, obedience, or endurance. That love arrives when you are good enough, calm enough, patient enough. But love that only appears when you meet certain conditions is not secure. It is transactional. Secure love does not fluctuate based on your performance. It does not disappear when you are tired, emotional, or imperfect. It does not require you to be less human to be accepted. If someone only values you when you are low maintenance, they do not value you. If someone withdraws when you need support, they are not available. If someone expects loyalty without offering clarity, they are asking for control, not connection. You do not need to convince someone to show up for you. If they wanted to, they would find a way, not occasionally, not temporarily, consistently. You do not need to earn basic respect. You do not need to tolerate uncertainty to prove your commitment. You do not need to sacrifice your emotional safety to be worthy of affection. Love that is real does not keep score. It does not hold your needs against you. It does not make you feel guilty for wanting to feel secure. The moment you stop trying to earn love, something shifts inside you. You begin to notice how much energy you were spending trying to be enough for someone who was never fully present. You begin to see how often you were waiting, hoping, adjusting, and excusing. And slowly, you stop negotiating with uncertainty. You start choosing situations where your presence is valued, not tested, where your emotions are met, not avoided, where communication is open, not selective, where effort is shared, not extracted. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You begin to understand that love is not proven by how much you endure. It is shown by how consistently someone chooses you without hesitation. You begin to realize that being chosen shouldn't feel rare or fragile. It should feel natural. You stop mistaking emotional distance for depth. You stop mistaking unpredictability for excitement. You stop mistaking tolerance for strength. Strength is walking away from situations that require you to betray yourself to stay connected. Strength is recognizing that love that drains you is not love that sustains you. Strength is choosing dignity over attachment. When you no longer believe you must earn love, you stop chasing it. You stop over-explaining. You stop waiting for clarity from people who avoid giving it. You stop hoping that patience will turn potential into commitment. You become more selective, not because you are closed, but because you are aware that your time matters, aware that your emotional energy is valuable, aware that consistency is not a luxury, it is a standard. And with that awareness comes peace, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need constant reassurance, the kind that doesn't question its worth. Every time someone pulls away, you learn that the right connection does not make you feel anxious for wanting more. It does not make you doubt yourself for asking where things are going. It does not make you feel irreplaceable. You stop romanticizing struggle. You stop glorifying patience that hurts. You stop telling yourself that love is supposed to be hard when what you really mean is that it has been hard for you. Love can be challenging, but it should not be confusing. It can require effort, but it should not require self-abandonment. It can involve growth, but it should not demand silence. You don't need to be chosen eventually. You deserve to be chosen intentionally, repeatedly, without games, without hesitation. And once you stop earning love, you start allowing it to meet you where you are, allowing it to be steady instead of dramatic, allowing it to feel safe instead of overwhelming, allowing yourself to receive without proving. You begin to understand that love is not something you win. It is something you share. It doesn't arrive after enough suffering. It arrives when two people are willing to show up fully. And when you know that, you no longer stay where love feels like work without reward, where effort is one-sided, where patience is endlessly requested but never returned, where your needs are postponed, where your voice feels risky, where your presence feels optional, where affection feels earned instead of given, where clarity is delayed, where consistency is promised but not practiced, where hope keeps you attached longer than truth, where you keep trying to be enough instead of realizing that you already were long before you started trying to prove it. True love honors boundaries. It does not ask you to diminish yourself to fit someone else's comfort. It does not expect your feelings to bend around their unpredictability. It does not teach you that your needs are negotiable or that your presence must be earned through endless patience. When love is real, it respects the limits you set, not because you are strict or difficult, but because your well-being matters. Boundaries are not walls, they are signals that you value yourself enough to protect your emotional space, to safeguard your energy, to ensure that love, when it comes, nurtures rather than drains. Many people mistake compromise for sacrifice. They believe that bending themselves repeatedly is proof of love. They think that tolerating disrespect or inconsistency is evidence of loyalty. Over time, they lose track of who they are in the effort to maintain connection. They begin to accept moments of neglect and call them normal. They adjust their expectations downward and call it understanding. And slowly, without noticing, they start minimizing their own voice, their own desires, and their own presence. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. They teach you to distinguish between connection that is healthy and connection that is draining. They allow you to notice when love is mutual and when it is conditional. They prevent you from staying in cycles that confuse intensity with intimacy or attention with affection. They remind you that your emotional health is not negotiable and that love should enhance your life, not complicate it unnecessarily. When someone respects your boundaries, you feel secure. You do not question your place. You do not feel like you are always performing to maintain their approval. You are allowed to exist fully without fear of reprimand or withdrawal. That security is not boring. It is a rare form of peace. It allows intimacy to grow naturally without coercion or anxiety, without guessing games or hidden rules. It allows connection to deepen because both parties are present in ways that are sustainable, reliable, and affirming. When someone violates your boundaries, however subtly, confusion creeps in. It may appear as casual disregard or small inconsistencies, but the effect accumulates. You begin to doubt your intuition. You question whether your limits are too strict, too demanding, too much. You adjust yourself in ways that feel uncomfortable, hoping that love will finally arrive if you compromise enough. And even when you do, love does not become consistent. The cycle repeats, leaving emotional fatigue in its wake. True love is not a negotiation of discomfort. It does not require you to stretch beyond your emotional capacity to earn attention. It is patient but not manipulative. It is generous but not conditional. It shows up even when there is no immediate gain. It is steady because the people involved value presence over pretense, care over convenience, and honesty over ambiguity. Love that respects boundaries does not feel like survival. It feels like arrival. It feels like finally having a place where your heart can rest and your feelings are acknowledged without hesitation or judgment. Boundaries also teach you to recognize patterns. When you establish them, you start to see which connections are aligned with your values and which are not. You notice when someone's effort matches their words, when presence matches promises, and when care is more than fleeting attention. And when you see the patterns clearly, you stop excusing inconsistency, misreading indifference as complexity, and tolerating absence disguised as freedom. You begin to distinguish between love that sustains you and attention that only unsettles you. Many people fear that setting boundaries will push others away. They worry that being clear about needs will make them appear rigid or unloving. Yet the opposite is true. Boundaries create clarity. They prevent confusion, resentment, and repeated emotional exhaustion. They invite genuine connection. They allow the people who truly care to meet you authentically without manipulation or games. They filter out relationships that thrive on unpredictability, leaving space for love that is consistent, reciprocal, and nourishing. When boundaries are respected, love can flourish without fear or uncertainty. You no longer question whether your feelings are too much, whether your presence is valued, or whether your heart is safe. You no longer tolerate fleeting attention or inconsistent care disguised as affection. You no longer confuse occasional gestures for deep commitment. You no longer shrink yourself to fit someone else's inconsistency. Instead, you begin to feel secure in your worth, confident in your expectations, and open to connection that truly mirrors respect, effort, and presence. Love that honors boundaries allows freedom without chaos. It allows intimacy without compromise of integrity. It allows you to show up fully while inviting the other person to do the same. It encourages vulnerability because you care. Now it will not be weaponized or disregarded. It cultivates trust because presence is predictable, care is consistent, and affection is intentional. And in that space, Love does not feel confusing or draining. It feels like alignment, like recognition, like home. Confusing attention erodes boundaries. It tests them repeatedly until you doubt your own judgment. It teaches you that patience should replace clarity, that compromise should replace safety, that endurance should replace reciprocity. It blurs the line between care and control, between desire and obligation, and eventually it conditions the heart to accept less than it deserves, to mistake inconsistency for depth, and to believe that love is earned only when it is scarce. By contrast, love that respects your limits reinforces your self-worth. It validates that your needs are reasonable, your feelings are legitimate, and your presence is valuable. It shows that affection is not transactional and that connection does not demand erasure of self. It communicates through repeated actions, not fleeting words, through attention that is reliable, not sporadic, through commitment that is visible, not implied. Boundaries also teach you patience, but the right kind. The kind that allows you to wait without anxiety, the kind that encourages discernment without compromise, the kind that helps you distinguish between temporary difficulty and fundamental mismatch. They allow you to navigate relationships with awareness instead of fear, with strength instead of desperation, with clarity instead of confusion. They prevent emotional exhaustion and nurture self-respect, allowing love to exist in a form that uplifts rather than diminishes, that stabilizes rather than destabilizes. You begin to notice how small acts reflect deep truths. Consistent listening, timely responses, respect for your limits, acknowledgement of your feelings. These are not trivial. They are markers of love that is steady and trustworthy. And you stop confusing grand gestures, sporadic attention, or fleeting intensity for genuine care. You start measuring relationships by patterns over time, not by isolated moments that feel good in the moment but leave you uncertain afterward. Boundaries allow space for reflection. They let you see how often you are compromising unnecessarily, excusing inconsistency, or tolerating behaviors that subtly undermine your sense of security. They help you identify which connections are worth investing in and which are worth stepping away from. They remind you that love is not a reward for endurance, but a shared commitment to mutual respect and presence. When you honor your own boundaries, you cultivate a standard for love. You begin to expect clarity instead of confusion, presence instead of absence, consistency instead of chaos, care instead of neglect. You begin to recognize that affection is not a prize to be won, but a foundation to be shared. You start to approach relationships with intentionality rather than desperation, with discernment rather than compromise, with integrity rather than acquiescence. True love, the kind that endures, the kind that nurtures, the kind that sustains, is built on the recognition of limits, the respect of needs, and the steadiness of presence. It does not require manipulation, testing, or endurance through confusion. It shows up reliably, communicates openly, and responds thoughtfully. Does not make you doubt your worth, question your feelings, or erode your confidence. Instead, it encourages growth, celebrates presence, and affirms the value of consistency in both giving and receiving. Boundaries, when honored, illuminate the difference between connection that drains and connection that nourishes. They reveal the patterns that indicate care versus indifference, attention versus distraction, love versus obligation. They give your heart permission to seek what it deserves, steadiness, clarity, and mutual respect. They allow love to exist without fear, effort without exhaustion, and closeness without compromise of self. And once you live by these principles, you begin to recognize that the love worth having does not test you through uncertainty, does not demand endurance through inconsistency, does not require compromise of your own emotional needs. You no longer accept behaviors that leave you anxious or depleted. You no longer mistake attention for affection or endurance for loyalty. You no longer confuse inconsistency with depth. Instead, you begin to embrace connections that are stable, caring, and consistent, where boundaries are respected and love is allowed to flourish naturally.